Ayubon. Well, viewers, welcome to a very fruitful discussion on living by Buddhism. As we all know, life, though it seems like one, it's no bed of roses. You come across a lot of obstacles, you come across a lot of barriers through life. But if you live accordingly to the steps followed by the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, if you just follow these steps or the teachings of the Buddha, perhaps you can overcome these barriers. Now today we have invited just the correct person to have a discussion on this matter. Well, he was rather the former ambassador. He is the former ambassador of Malaysia, Dato Dr. Ananda Kumarasiri. He is also the retired Director General of the Asian Organization, a much sought out speaker of the Dhamma. So we warmly welcome you to this program. And first of all, sir, I would like you to explain, what do you mean by living by Buddhism? How practical is this?
Sukhi hotu Dhammaputri Suwandani. I see that you're a little bit bewildered by this greeting. You greeted me Ayubowan, which is a beautiful greeting, born out of a Buddhist heritage and Buddhist culture. But Sukhi hotu is a universal greeting, again born out of Buddhist heritage and Buddhist culture. It is a very meaningful greeting. Unfortunately, we have lost it. We have such a rich heritage of Buddhist culture and tradition. Hardly anybody greets each other by Sukhi hotu. Sukhi hotu means may you be happy and well always. Instead, when we meet each other, we wish each other good morning or good afternoon or good night. And I used to wonder about this greeting simply because there's nothing good about the morning. What happens when you read the newspapers? You know, you get so disgusted, you get so upset with all the disturbing news that you read, and yet you wish each other good morning. There is a bomb that has gone off, and there is some massacre taking place somewhere. There is a rape, and there is some robbery, some theft, some accident has taken, some disaster somewhere, and we go on saying good morning without even thinking that there is no meaning in this greeting. This is the problem that we have faced, and I don't know whether you thought about it, but I'd like to ask you, normally you ask questions, but this time I want to ask you a question. Why is it that we go on wishing each other good morning when there is no meaning in it, there's nothing sensible in it, there's nothing fantastic about it? Why is it that we do this?
Well, I think, sir, people have this mentality since most probably because we were under the British for some time. They sort of, I don't know why, but they sort of find it somewhat embarrassing to say Ayubowan, or perhaps they might think, okay, if I say Ayubowan, what might the other person think? Yeah. Maybe that's why.
You're right. It's an accident of history. We have borrowed something from the outside and throwing away what we have, for centuries and centuries we have been using. The other point about this greeting of good morning is that, there's nothing, not only there's nothing good about the morning, when you wish somebody good morning, you're not wishing the person, you're wishing the time of the day. You meet the same person in the afternoon, you wish the person good afternoon. You wish him at the night, you meet him at the night, you wish him good night. Which means that you're not wishing him, you're actually wishing the time of the day. And we keep on doing it simply because, as I like to indicate, it's because of a process of acculturalization. I like to use the word acculturalization, is that because we have been taught this way, and everybody else is doing it, therefore we also do it unthinkingly.
Exactly.
The important thing is we do it unthinkingly. And from small we have been taught in English as well as in our own language, Suba Utasanak Veva, Suba Sandavak Veva, Suba Ratriak Veva, which doesn't make any sense. Now we need to really promote the practical and aspects of Buddhism and the practice of Buddhism. Sukhi Hotu is a universal greeting. It cuts across all cultures, all traditions, all races, all regions, all nationalities, whatever, wherever you come from. You can still greet somebody else Sukhi Hotu. As I said, it means may you be happy and well always. Not just the morning, not just the afternoon, not just the night, but always. And it's a universal greeting. You can greet anybody with that greeting. Now, if you go to any of the traditional Buddhist countries, you will find very rich greetings. You illustrated by greeting me, Ayubo One, may you have a long and prosperous life. Again, born of Buddhism, because it is born out of this concept that we have, or the cultural heritage we have, called Brahma Vihara. Sukhi Hotu is born out of Metta, of Karuna, of Mudita, and of Upeka. And when you wish somebody Sukhi Hotu, and when you put your palms together in a lotus bud formation, you are wishing the other person, may you bloom like a lotus. And in Buddhist concept and symbolism, the lotus bud, when it blooms into a beautiful lotus, it is a symbol of wisdom, symbol of purity, symbol of the goodness that we have in ourselves. So it's a very meaningful greeting, and this has been adopted in many of the countries. If you go to Japan, for example, today, of course, they wish each other Ohayo gozaimasu, konbawa and konnichiwa, again the aping of the Western greeting of good morning, good afternoon and good night. Whereas the traditional Buddhist flavored or Buddhist inherited greeting is O genki desu ka? Are you well? You know, it's a beautiful greeting. And in China, in the good old days, for example, I'm just illustrating because I want to show that the Buddhist religion had a tremendous impact on the way people think and on the way the people behave and the people lived. So we tend to look at Buddhism only in terms of the Dhamma without looking at the cultural and the developmental aspects of the human being. So that's why I'm trying to emphasize for the past several years the importance of the practice and practical application of Buddhism, not so much the knowing of Buddhism. I will develop this concept further as we go along, but I thought I'll spend some time, and I intentionally want to spend some time to demonstrate the richness that can come out of Buddhism in the way of thinking and living that it brings about in any society. In China, for example, when Buddhism went to China in the early days, they were not interested because they were so advanced and they were so well off. But during the 2nd century BCE, when the Han dynasty was in chaos and there was tremendous famine and people were dying by the millions, then they got interested in Buddhism because that was the only solace they could get, going in front of the Buddha image and getting the serenity of the Buddha to console them, to pacify them through their hardships. And at that time, they also developed the pantheon of goddess Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy, and many of the Buddhist practices became entrenched in China. So when somebody met another person in China during those days, they used to wish each other Sek Pao Mei, which means have you eaten? Because, out of your karuna and metta, the first thing you want to find out from the person is whether he had had a meal. Everybody was starving and dying out of starvation and famine.
I think the Buddha himself practiced that.
Oh, yes. He says before you even want to preach the Dhamma, please give the person some food, because in an empty stomach, what can he think? He's only thinking about his hunger. So these are all very Buddhistic, aspects which comes out in a society, in a culture. And, we have had over 2,000 years of Buddhist culture in Sri Lanka, and it is very evident. But as I said, unfortunately, much of it is lost. And I think we need to try and revive these things. Even the word Buddhism and Buddhist are the most abused and misunderstood terms, actually. we use the word so freely without even knowing that it doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing as Buddhism, and there's no such thing as Buddhist. This is again a Western introduction or intervention. We unfortunately or fortunately have been influenced in a very strong way by the English language, and when the English people saw this the teachings of the Buddha, they took the word Buddha and put the word ism and referred to the teachings of the Buddha as Buddhism, just like they coined the word consumerism, socialism,
Yes.
capitalism, and so on, without even understanding what the term Buddha meant. The word Buddha, is completely foreign to their own understanding. It's an appellation. They thought Buddha means a kind of a reference to the teacher.
Person,
yes. But actually, in our own understanding of what the term Buddha is, it derived from the word Bodhi, which means enlightened, fully awakened from the realities of the life and nature of dukkha, and that is actually an appellation and not a proper name.
The climax of intelligence.
Yes, not a proper name. But because of their system, and then the whole world has been stuck. The Buddha did not teach Buddhism, he taught the Dhamma. So even during his time, the actual reference was Buddha, Dhamma, or simply as Dhamma. And we need to try and make people understand at a global level that the terms Buddhism and Buddhist are misnomers. But we can't help, to some extent we can't help using it because it's been so entrenched in the English language, and it has already been entrenched in other languages. So we are perforce, to use it, but it's the onus on us to understand and to use it in the correct sense. We must understand what it means. So that's another area that I like to try and focus on, because these are some of the accidents of history that we need to bring attention to today.
Exactly. Now, sir, you just happened to mention the 4 Brahma Viharana, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekha. Can you just, I think because since this program goes out to many people in the world, and sometimes our own Buddhists, they just do not know the difference between these 4 qualities. Can you explain this as well as just tell us how to apply it practically?
Well, thank you. I need to actually explain what metta is, because again, by historical antecedents, we tend to say metta as loving kindness, because that was the first translation of the word metta. Loving and kindness, to my mind, and to a number of other learned people, does not seem to be congruous. Love is love, kindness is kindness. In terms of etymology, the term metta is derived from the word mitra. Mitra means friend. So perhaps we need to now disengage ourselves, or not continue to use loving kindness, which has already been stuck in many of the writings and literature on Buddhism, but to use friendliness or universal benevolence or universal goodwill or unconditional friendliness. So the idea of friendliness is very, very entrenched in Buddhism, because the Buddha, in his many discourses, emphasized the need to have close relationship with your fellow beings. In fact, his whole definition of community was Sangha. And he divided the Sangha into a 4-fold community of the monastic Sangha,